how to raise your standards. Well, now, let me tell you something that might sting a little at first, but will settle in like good medicine. You ain't gonna rise higher than the bar you set for yourself. If your bar is low, life will step right over it. No effort, no respect, and no reward. But when you raise your standards, you send a message to the world and to yourself that you ain't here to play small. You're here to walk tall. Raising your standards isn't about being better than the next fella. It's about being better than the man or woman you were yesterday. It's about changin' the way you show up, even when no one's watchin'. See, life's a lot like ridin' a wild horse. If your grip is loose, you'll get thrown. But if you decide, deep in your bones, that fallin' isn't your end but just another round, you'll hang on longer than anyone thought you could. 1. Decide what you will no longer tolerate. Every human life is framed by boundaries, some chosen, most unconsciously inherited. From childhood, we learn to adapt to the conditions around us, accepting patterns of treatment, levels of effort, and definitions of worth that are given to us. But the tragedy is that we often mistake these inherited standards for permanent truth. To raise one's standards is not simply to aim higher. It is to awaken from the trance of unconscious acceptance and to ask, what have I been allowing that drains my dignity? There comes a point in every life where the quiet voice inside demands a reckoning. It whispers in the still hours, you were not meant to endure this forever. But such whispers are easy to ignore, especially when change means confrontation with others and with oneself. It takes courage to look at your own life and admit, I have been complicit in my own limitations. The patterns you tolerate, whether mediocrity in your work, disrespect in your relationships, or weakness in your own discipline, are the very patterns that define your destiny. Setting a higher standard is not a matter of arrogance. It is an act of self-respect, and self-respect is not born from applause. It is born from knowing that you have aligned your outer life with your inner truth. This alignment begins with subtraction, not addition. Before you add dreams and ambitions, you must first remove the poison that weakens you. This is why deciding what you will no longer tolerate is the first and most crucial step. But be warned, when you raise your boundaries, resistance will rise. Those who benefit from your low standards will be unsettled by your new ones. You may be accused of being difficult, demanding, or changed. Take this as confirmation that you are moving in the right direction. To tolerate less is to require more not just from others, but from yourself. And that requirement is what transforms existence from survival into purpose. Life will always offer you exactly what you are willing to accept. If you accept smallness, you will live in small rooms. If you demand strength, the world will test you with storms, and you will emerge stronger than the winds that tried to bend you. The inner transformation begins the moment you stop making excuses for what drains your life. The mind, once awakened to the possibility of more, can never return to peaceful ignorance. You will either move forward into the higher ground you seek, or you will live in a permanent tension with the truth you have seen. To decide what you will no longer tolerate is not an act of rejection, but of creation. You are clearing the land on which to build something worthy. In the same way a farmer removes stones from the soil before planting, you must remove the tolerated evils before planting new aspirations. The more ruthless you are with what you cut away, the richer the harvest that will follow. Your soul already knows what is beneath you. It already knows which relationships, habits, and compromises diminish your light. The question is not whether you see the truth. The question is whether you will act on it. This is the point at which many falter, because acting on truth means risking comfort. But comfort is a slow poison, numbing the will until years pass and you realize you have built a life that feels safe but small. Refuse to be the architect of a cage. Raise the floor beneath you so that even your lowest day rests above the level you once called good enough. This is how transformation begins, not in the grandeur of dreams, but in the quiet, defiant decision that this, right here, is no longer acceptable. Once you make that decision, the path forward will still be hard, but it will finally be yours. 2. Surround yourself with higher ground folks. A person's life is shaped as much by the company they keep as by the thoughts they think. We like to believe we are sovereign beings, steering our own course, immune to the subtle pull of others. But the truth is, our minds are like rivers always flowing, always influenced by the terrain they pass through. If the land is rich, the waters grow clear and nourishing. If the land is poisoned, the current carries that poison far downstream. Every human being has an invisible circle around them, a network of energies, beliefs, and habits absorbed from those they walk beside. These influences are not neutral. They either lift you toward your higher nature or pull you back toward the weight of mediocrity. It is a quiet gravity, unnoticed until you wake up one day and realize you have been drifting not because you lost your will, but because the tide around you carried you where it was going. To raise your standards, you must seek out people who embody the higher ground you wish to stand upon. These are not merely the successful in worldly terms, though achievement can be a sign of discipline. The real higher ground folks are those whose very presence calls forth something greater in you. They speak with integrity even when silence would be easier. They act with principle even when compromise would be more comfortable. They remind you without preaching that you were made for more than sleepwalking through life. This does not mean abandoning compassion for those who struggle, but it does mean guarding the inner gates of your mind. Pity and loyalty are dangerous reasons to remain in the company of people whose habits erode your own. If someone's vision is smaller than yours and they are unwilling to grow, they will eventually try to shrink yours to match. It will not always be malicious. Sometimes it will come in the form of concern, warning, or mockery disguised as humor. But over time, those seeds take root, and once doubt has found a place to live in you, it will whisper every time you try to climb higher, "Who do you think you are?" Finding higher ground people requires humility. You must be willing to stand among those who surpass you in skill, knowledge, and character, not to compete with them, but to learn. This is humbling for the ego, but strengthening for the soul. The right companions will not let you remain in the comfort of your excuses. They will expect more from you because they expect more from themselves. When you spend time with those who have raised their own standards, you begin to internalize their rhythm. Excellence becomes normal. Integrity becomes expected. Courage becomes the baseline, and without realizing it, you will begin to measure your own life not against the low bar of the average, but against the higher bar of the extraordinary. There is also a deeper, more mysterious truth. We do not simply choose the people around us, we also become like them. The psyche absorbs patterns the way the body absorbs sunlight or toxins. And if you stand in the shade too long, you will forget what warmth feels like. The company you keep is not a detail of your life, it is the environment of your becoming. Sometimes, raising your standards means enduring seasons of solitude while you wait for the right company. The silence can feel heavy, but it is in that silence that you begin to hear your own true voice again. And once you have heard it, you will never again feel at home in circles that drown it out. Choose those whose presence expands your courage, not those whose approval depends on your compliance. Walk with those who have endured storms without letting bitterness take root. Share the trail with those who, by simply living as they do, remind you of the heights you once dreamed of but feared to climb. When you surround yourself with higher ground folks, something shifts not in them, but in you. You begin to sense that your own higher ground is not far off, that you too can rise, that the life you once thought impossible is not beyond reach. And then, step by step, mile by mile, you climb toward it. 3. Master the little things. There's a deception the world sells us that greatness is built in grand gestures, in dramatic moments where history watches and the crowd roars. But the deeper truth is quieter, almost invisible. The foundation of excellence is laid in the smallest, most ordinary moments of your life. It's in the way you greet the day, the way you finish a task no one else will notice, the way you keep your word even when no one is watching. The little things are not little. They are the structure that holds the weight of your entire life. When neglected, they erode your foundation grain by grain until collapse seems sudden, but it was never sudden. It was years of small compromises, invisible to the eye but corrosive to the soul. Why do the small things matter so much? Because they are constant. Big victories are rare. Once in a lifetime, opportunities are, by definition, rare. But the daily choices, what time you rise, how you speak to strangers, whether you clean up after yourself, whether you follow through on what you said, these accumulate like drops of water. Over time, they carve the shape of your character. Mastering the little things is not about perfectionism. It's about discipline. Discipline is not a punishment you inflict on yourself. It's a form of loyalty to your own future. Every small act of order, respect, or integrity is a deposit into an account that will one day pay you back when the storms hit. There is a law at work in the soul. How you do one thing is how you do all things. If you are careless with the small, you will eventually be careless with the great. If you take shortcuts where no one will notice, you will find yourself tempted to take shortcuts where everyone will. The habits you build in the shadows determine the strength you bring into the light. The mind often rebels against this truth. It whispers, "It doesn't matter, no one will know." But someone will know you. And every time you betray your own standard in the small things, you send a subtle message to yourself, that your word is negotiable, that your effort is conditional, that your own approval doesn't matter as much as convenience. But when you decide to master the little things, you reverse that message. You begin telling yourself, "I am a person who can be trusted even by me." And there is a quiet power in this. You start to carry yourself differently, speak differently, and stand differently because you know your inner life and outer life are aligned. Some people wait for the big break to begin living at a higher level. But the big break is rarely given to those who have not proven themselves in the small breaks, the tiny, unglamorous opportunities to show up fully. Life tests you long before it rewards you. The test is in the details. There is also a deeper mystery. When you master the little things, you begin to master yourself. The cup you wash after dinner, the note you remember to send, the extra effort you give to the task at hand, each of these is a small victory over laziness, carelessness, and forgetfulness. And each victory strengthens the muscles you will one day need for the great battles. Think of it like sharpening a blade. You don't wait until the enemy is charging to prepare your weapon. You sharpen it daily, even when there is no threat, so that when the day comes, you are ready without hesitation. Greatness is not an act but a habit. It is the sum of countless small acts, each performed with intention and care. To raise your standards, begin here in the tiny details of your day that no one applauds and no one notices. Over time, you will notice that these little things have lifted your entire life onto higher ground. And when the world finally does notice you, it will not be because of one grand moment, but because you have become the kind of person who lives every moment well. 4. Make hard choices without flinch. And life is full of crossroads where comfort and growth stand on opposite sides, calling your name. The easy path is smooth, familiar, and lined with friendly faces telling you to stay. The hard path is steep, uncertain, and often lonely. Choosing the hard path is not natural to the human heart. It requires courage that feels like tearing away from your own skin. Yet every true raising of standards demands it. Most people think their lives are shaped by the big events, promotions, relationships, victories, losses. But if you trace those events backward, you find they were born from a decision point, a moment when you had to choose between what was easy and what was right. These moments rarely announce themselves with trumpets. They come quietly, sometimes disguised as inconvenience, risk, or the unfamiliar. To make hard choices without flinching is to live by your own code rather than the world's expectations. It means walking away from the comfortable job that pays well but robs you of purpose. It means ending relationships that feel safe but small. It means refusing to compromise your integrity for short-term gain, even when the cost is high. These choices hurt in the moment. They may even make you question your sanity. But over time, they carve the path toward a life you can stand in without shame. The flinch, that instinct to hesitate, to stall, to bargain with yourself, is the mind's last attempt to protect you from pain. But the same flinch that keeps you from pain also keeps you from transformation. If you always wait for certainty before moving, you will never move. If you require the applause of others before acting, you will always live in the shadow of their approval. There is a kind of quiet bravery in people who do not hesitate when the moment comes. They have decided in advance what they stand for. So when the choice appears, they are not negotiating with fear, they are simply acting on who they are. The decision has already been made in their hearts. The moment is only the execution. This requires an inner clarity that cannot be faked. You must know what you value more than comfort. You must be willing to accept the loneliness, the uncertainty, and the disapproval that often come with high standards. Many will not understand your choices. Some will even resent them. But the point of raising your standards is not to be understood by everyone, it is to be understood by yourself. It is also worth knowing that hard choices often lead to short-term loss but long-term gain. The job you walk away from may leave you scrambling for months, but it may also open the door to a career aligned with your deepest calling. The relationship you end may leave you alone in the quiet, but in that quiet, you may finally meet the person you were meant to become. Life has a strange way of repaying courage, not always quickly, but always fully. The opposite is also true. Avoiding the hard choice for the sake of comfort brings short-term ease but long-term regret. The road you didn't take will haunt you, not because you lost the opportunity, but because you lost the chance to see who you might have been. To make hard choices without flinching, you must practice in small ways. Say no when you mean no. Speak truth even when it trembles in your mouth. Walk away from what insults your soul, even if no one else sees the insult. Over time, you build the muscle to make larger sacrifices when they are called for. There is a deep, almost sacred satisfaction in looking back on your life and knowing you did not betray yourself at the crossroads. You may carry scars, you may carry losses, but you will also carry a kind of self-respect that cannot be bought. And when the next hard choice comes, and you will not flinch. You will stand in the clarity of who you are and take the step, even if your legs shake. 5. Demand effort before outcome. We live in a world obsessed with results, the trophy, the title, the visible proof that you have made it. Yet the most dangerous trap a person can fall into is tying their worth to outcomes they cannot fully control. Results are influenced by timing, circumstance, and the will of others. Effort, on the other hand, is entirely yours. To demand effort before outcome is to shift your focus from the end of the road to the steps beneath your feet. It means deciding that the measure of your day is not in the applause you receive, but in the work you have done with all your strength. This is not an excuse to ignore results, they matter, but it is a commitment to master the one thing you can always control, how fully you show up. The mind resists this because it wants the shortcut. It asks, what's the point of trying so hard if I can't guarantee the reward? But the deeper truth is that the reward is not what you get, it's what you become in the pursuit. A goal may give you direction, but the pursuit itself gives you transformation. When you demand effort from yourself first, you build a resilience that outcomes cannot take away. If you lose, you still win because you know you gave everything. That kind of self-knowledge is a shield against bitterness and regret. It turns failure into feedback instead of a final verdict. Effort is also the great equalizer. Talent, luck, and privilege are unevenly distributed, but effort belongs to anyone willing to give it. You may not control how the world receives your work, but you can control the sweat, the patience, and the focus you pour into it. And over time, effort has a way of bending the odds in your favor. There is also a deeper layer here. When you train yourself to value effort over outcome, you free yourself from the tyranny of perfectionism. You no longer wait for the perfect conditions to start, because the goal is not flawlessness. The goal is to work with integrity in whatever conditions you have. And when you work this way, something strange happens. Your results improve naturally, because you are no longer distracted by the fear of failure. This mindset also guards you from the poison of entitlement. Some people believe they deserve certain outcomes simply because they want them badly, but wanting is not earning. Effort is the proof that you are willing to pay the price for what you say you value. Without it, your dreams remain unpaid debts. Effort is not a one-time push, it is a habit, a way of moving through the world. It shows in the consistency of your actions, in the details you refuse to overlook, in the persistence you bring to the unglamorous parts of your craft. The great victories of life are rarely won in the final hour of the battle. They are decided in the months and years of preparation beforehand. When you demand effort from yourself, you also attract others who live by the same principle. This creates a circle where excellence is normal, where no one makes excuses, where everyone understands that the only way forward is through relentless, honest work. In such an environment, outcomes become byproducts of character rather than the sole purpose of action. Demanding effort before outcome is not about lowering your ambition, it is about raising your ownership. It is a refusal to let external conditions dictate your identity. It is a decision to measure yourself not by the size of your victories, but by the truth of your effort. And here's the paradox. When you stop chasing results and start chasing mastery of effort, the results often surpass what you once thought possible. Because now, instead of living for the prize, you are living for the process, and the process is where the real transformation happens. 6. Keep re-raising the bar. There is a quiet danger that waits for every person who has fought to raise their standards, the temptation to stop, the temptation to declare the work done. After all, you've climbed higher than before. You've broken past limitations. You've earned a life others might envy. But comfort has a way of dressing itself in the clothes of achievement. If you mistake the summit you've reached for the final peak, you'll stop climbing, and without realizing it, you'll begin the slow descent back to mediocrity. Human nature loves arrival. We long for the day we can rest, point to our work, and say, "This is enough." But there is no true arrival in the growth of the soul. The moment you stop reaching for the next level, your standards begin to soften. And softened standards are like a fence in disrepair. They no longer keep out what once threatened you. To keep re-raising the bar is to live with a relentless hunger for deeper mastery, for truer integrity, for greater service. It doesn't mean you're never satisfied. It means you're never stagnant. You can be grateful for where you are and still demand more from yourself. In fact, true gratitude is not passive. It fuels the desire to see how far you can go with the gifts you've been given. The mind will resist this, whispering, "Haven't you done enough? Haven't you earned a break?" And rest has its place, but rest is meant to prepare you for the next climb, not replace it. When you treat rest as a permanent state, it turns to decay. Muscles weaken, discipline dulls. The fire that once drove you fades into a quiet ash. Keeping the bar rising is not about chasing perfection or living in constant dissatisfaction. It's about honoring the truth that you are capable of more than you know, and that each new standard you reach reveals another layer of possibility. Just as a mountain reveals new horizons with every ascent, life reveals new potentials with every higher standard you meet. There is a certain humility required here. You must accept that no matter how much you've learned, there is more to understand. No matter how skilled you've become, there are deeper levels of mastery. No matter how much good you've done, there is greater good you can bring. This humility is what keeps you from becoming a prisoner of your own past victories. The greatest danger to a warrior is not the fiercest enemy, but the memory of his last win. Victory can lull you into thinking the battle is over, but life's battles are ongoing, and the enemies of complacency, laziness, and pride never truly sleep. The discipline that raised your standards in the first place must now protect them from erosion. When you live with the mindset of always re-raising the bar, you stop comparing yourself to others. Your only comparison is with who you were yesterday. The measure of your life becomes the distance between your former self and your current self, and that distance grows only if you keep moving. There is also a strange joy in this endless climb. Each higher standard becomes proof that you are still alive in the deepest sense, still learning, still stretching, still refusing to let time or comfort shrink you. You begin to see life not as a destination to reach, but as a continual unfolding, each chapter better written because you refused to settle for the last draft. So take the time to look back at how far you've come. Let yourself feel the pride of the miles you've walked. Then, without delay, look ahead to the next ridge, the next test, the next place where the bar will rise again. This is not a burden, it is the privilege of those who are still growing. Because in the end, the highest standard you will ever hold is not for your work, your wealth, or your reputation, it is for your own becoming. And the moment you stop raising it, you stop becoming. The quiet contract with yourself when you raise your standards, you are not simply setting new goals, you are rewriting the quiet contract you have with yourself. This contract is not signed in ink, but in action. It is written in the way you show up, the lines you refuse to cross, the company you keep, the details you master, the choices you make when no one is watching, and the effort you demand before the outcome ever arrives. Each keynote we've walked through is a pillar in the house of a higher life. You decide what you will no longer tolerate, clearing the weeds so that strength can grow. You surround yourself with higher ground folks, letting their example sharpen your own edge. You master the little things because the small is where the great is born. You make hard choices without flinching, trading comfort for the truth of who you are. You demand effort before outcome, anchoring yourself in what you can control. And you keep re-raising the bar because the work is never finished until your last breath. This is not an easy road. In fact, it is the opposite of easy. It is the road of self-confrontation, of facing the parts of you that would rather hide in the shadows of convenience. But the prize is not just a better life, it is a better self. You will lose things along the way. You will lose the comfort of old habits, the security of familiar mediocrity, and the approval of those who prefer the smaller version of you. But what you gain is worth the loss, a life you can stand in without apology, a strength that no one can give or take from you, and a standard that turns every day into an act of becoming. In the end, raising your standards is not about pride or perfection, it is about alignment. It is about bringing your daily actions in line with the person you know, deep down, you were meant to be, and when you live in that alignment, you no longer have to chase meaning. Meaning finds you. So stand up, draw the line, walk with those who make you better, give everything to the smallest task, take the hard road when it calls your name, measure yourself by your effort, and when you reach the summit, don't stop climb again. Because the standard you hold for yourself will become the ceiling of your life, and if you keep raising it, you will find that there is no ceiling at all.